time if I can. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Nolan. Most people call me Kath to my face, or they call me behind my back. It's really a matter of opinion. So, we're here in Internet Law. We hate the room, I get that. Let's not complain about it too much. What I will do, I've been trying building 80, to be quite frank, because I do like an HDMI connection and I do like a table where you can work in groups. I was told it was near on impossible. There are 2 rooms in this building which I suspect would work better. One of them is next door and the other one is down on level 1. So we've just got guests this morning who are coming here at 11, so I want to make sure that they can find us and stuff like that. Because with a little added complication, according to the university, I don't work here anymore. If you send me an email today, you will get a permanent failure response. Which, yeah, I'm particularly impressed with that. Yeah, exactly. There's an irony there. I've sent possibly the nastiest email I've sent in a very long time this morning, suggesting that the irony here is RMIT Online, which seem to be the people who have cut me off, basically owe me and all of you an apology. That apology should involve presents. They have some very nice coffee mugs. Because, yeah, I'm fiddling around, and in, true to form for this year, there is quite a likelihood that there will be minor differences between the slides that are uploaded that are on the system and my sort of second to last draft. And I picked up some typos in it this morning, so there's all sorts of room for document variation, which I'll be showing you today, or possibly tomorrow as well, because apparently there's no way that they can even start getting me back on the system until Monday. So I'm sorry about that. I can't even get on the internet here without using my phone to do it. So there are going to be a couple of little mucking around bits and pieces. So I apologise for that in advance, because it just wouldn't be a Kath Nolan class without a technology breakdown. So let's get them over and done with very early on. Also, I thought about you yesterday, Ben, because I did almost half of your Oxfam. I did the Coast Trek walk yesterday because I'm an idiot and I agreed to do it before I looked at the timetable for when the classes.
Last conversation we had, you were going to quit out of it. So.
I did quit out of it. I went 3/4 of the way, so I did 43.5. So it's actually less than half next month.
I did it years ago.
So he did Oxfam, and all through contract law, every opportunity he got, it was to essentially spook me about how I needed an extra pair of shoes, how I was going to get blisters on my blisters, all of this planning, how I needed to put some special syrup in my Camelback. I don't know, everybody else is really supportive. Ben is like, these are all the things that can go wrong. This is why he will be a good lawyer at some point in the future. He thinks about the stuff that will go wrong. Nothing went wrong to the extent that I do this and, rub my bum. It's not because I think you're assholes, it's because my bum hurts. I would probably be rubbing my calves, only I'm not entirely sure I can lean down that far. They're the things that hurt the most. So, actually, I think I pulled up okay because of you. I'm not sure I would have pulled up if I'd done the whole 60 quite as well. So I did quit out because you spooked me and because I love you all, even though I haven't met half of you yet, and I want you to have a good experience. So, Internet law. I don't even know what that means. When they told me that I have been putting my hand up to teach a subject that I thought would be called something like law and information technology since I started working here about 4 years ago. And finally they rang me and said, yeah, that technology subject you want to teach, we want you to do it. Yeah, let's get started. We've got an existing shell of a subject, let's get started with that. And then I get told it's called Internet law. Like, what does Internet law even mean? May as well say law of shopping. So I want you to think about that. When you actually look at what the course objectives are, they are broader and focused on, while they use the word internet, they really focus on technology. And so this very broad subject, which is, actually can I just do a show of hands? How many of you are first year students? Essentially have done, so I don't think we've got everybody here yet, but I'm guessing roughly a third of you. This subject has been designed for essentially as a first year elective, that there are, other than I think fundamentals of contract law, I think it actually says contract law, but what they mean is fundamentals of contract law, there are no prerequisites for it. So in a sense, the fact that it's called internet law is a very good thing. It is a broad-based subject using one stream or subject area that is essentially designed to help you get better at researching and thinking about, so analysing and using synthesis in relation to legal issues in a particular industry stream. So on the way, you're going to learn quite a few things about the internet, about the use of technology and the kinds of issues that come up. But internet law is, by its very nature, or technology law, the study of the laws as they relate to an industry or a process, as opposed to a particular bucket of laws. So most of the, particularly the core subjects, are a particular type of law that get applied to a range of different industries. So in that way, you might find it kind of frustrating, because we're going to go all over the place talking about a whole lot of subject areas that you may or may not have come in contact with, or contract with as well. In fact, most of you will have contracted in some way with the internet at some point. This is also very much by my design, so to the extent you want to complain about it, complain to me, a student-driven course. The way, those of you who've taken the time, and I suspect it'll be all of you because it's the thing you're most interested in, they've taken the time to look at the assessment, will see that you've got the opportunity to do a deep dive, starting with a group and then ending up with yourself, into something that interests you. Then we've got that scary, terrifying thing called participation, which is the thing that requires you to pay attention to the bits that aren't directly related to what's on your assessment task. Okay, so now, looking at the ceiling so that I don't look at anybody who I know is terrified by the idea of participation. Participation does not mean being the loudest person in the class, unless you know. Participation does not mean quantity of input. I have tried as hard as I can to have a range of different ways to get you to participate in the way that you feel most comfortable. That means that you're collaborating with the other people in your group, you're getting something out of it, and you are demonstrating to me that you are all in. That's what participation is about. So yes, participating in the room would be awesome. Me talking all the time, particularly 6 hours, 2 days in a row when I have no internet connection and it can get quite warm in here, is going to be unpleasant for me. So I do want to hear from you, and other people want to hear from you too. We'll be using a platform that the university has only recently introduced called Go Soapbox, which will allow you to put comments and questions essentially onto a platform really early on, and I'll show you how to use that in a minute. I may need somebody to demonstrate for me because I can't connect to the internet, but we'll get there. So you'll be able to do that particularly, and we'll have a practice run with our first guest speakers who are going to be here in 20 minutes. What I'm going to ask you to do particularly is I'm going to open that up when we've got guest speakers in the room. And so I want you all to log in. Can you please do it with your student number? The reason for that, if it'll ask you for your name, I want you to use your student number. The reason for that is I'm trying as hard as I can to get rid of any unconscious bias that I might have. Like I said, I love you all. But sometimes some people will stand out to me more than others from their personalities or the way they contribute in the room. That might be a good thing for them, it might be a bad thing for them, I don't know. I don't actually want to know who you are when you're participating online, if you can. I think also, I do need your student number though, because then I can just map it to the assessment. So when I'm going back and looking at what the comments were, When we're actually in the room, we'll have opportunities to pull out some of those questions and explore them. You guys will be able to talk to each other in that environment. But if you're all using student numbers, it just makes it a little bit more anonymous. I know there are plenty of people, I am not one of them, who will see a number once and they'll be able to work out who it is and remember it. I'm not one of those people. I'd rather you didn't tell me. We can work from that way. If you do tell me in the room and somebody says, you know, that was my comment, this is what I was thinking, that's fantastic. But the reality is I will not remember on an ongoing basis. So I don't know what that says about me, but domain names are a really good thing. IP addresses could never work for me. All right, let's just get, so let me, before I go any further too, so we've got a lot of guest lecturers coming in. I've asked a number of industry people to come in and talk to you about what they do, particular areas they're at. So we've got two lawyers from Allens coming in any minute now. And one of them, Priyanka Nair, I know her through the Victorian Society for Computers and the Law. She is, has recently become the president of that august association, which, by the way, accepts student members. We ran a thing here a couple of months ago. Martha was here, so I don't remember. I remember because Martha did the thank you. So she's one of the authors of a report that Allens, that firm, put together on called Blockchain Reaction, exploring the different ways that blockchain might be used in the different legal issues that come up. She's going to talk to you about that. And her colleague Leah Wickman, I think, who I hadn't met previously, is going to give, yep, that's it, BSCL, is going to give you a quick overview, high-level overview of privacy laws. What I want to cover today around that, after we have a conversation, I've got a little slide pack here, which some of you will have seen, just going through some admin and assessment issues. I'll talk about the admin before they get here. We'll stretch our legs, otherwise we'll go through the assessment stuff afterwards. And then I'm going to have a bit of a chat with you about the overview regulation of the internet, what the internet is, how it works, that kind of stuff. Then tomorrow, my main presentation will essentially be around data protection and privacy from memory. And Julian Lambert, who's General Manager in Victoria of an organisation called Law and Order, is going to come in and talk with you and run a little workshop around e-discovery and electronic courts. Those of you who worked in court with me before know I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm not a disputes lawyer. I've never been involved in disputes on purpose. And so whilst Julian is not a lawyer, he's involved in some of the biggest e-discovery and electronic court matters that are going on, and their company provided all of the back-end services for a number of the most recent Royal Commissions, including the Bushfire Royal Commission. And so he can give you some real insights into how those technologies are being used in a dispute focus. And we'll set you the challenge of thinking about, as lawyers, if you were involved in a dispute and there was a terabyte of data that needed to be the subject of discovery, how you would go about that. So I think I have lots of presentations ready for tomorrow on the broader stuff. I doubt we'll get through it unless you guys aren't participating, and given that it's 20% participation, I suspect that you will do that. All right, good? Everybody happy? Happy enough anyway? Let's get started. So this is me, I think, yep. My contact details are there. That phone number, the landline number, it's a little bit unreliable, I have to say, because it actually just goes with a Skype number, and sometimes I don't notice if messages are there. It's supposed to go to my mobile. You know, the easiest way to get me mostly is to ring my mobile and leave a message. If you ring my mobile and don't leave a message, I don't return your call. Text me if you're worried. That's probably the easiest way to get to me. Today, tomorrow, and possibly into next week, if you email me, you'll get a bounce message saying I don't work here anymore. It's not entirely sure whether I've ever worked here, but yeah, so text, phone number, That's probably the easiest thing. I don't have an office on campus. I'm in and out all the time. Again, phone's probably the easiest way. If I don't respond to your emails within 48 hours, that means something's gone wrong. Most likely, I've read it on my phone, thought, actually that's just too hard for me to respond to with my thumbs. I'll do that later, and then forgotten to mark it as unread and lost it. That happens. That is the most likely reason. So it's between a stuff up and a conspiracy. If it's urgent, if you're worried, ring me. Then I know you really need my response. If it's gone 48 hours, you haven't heard from me, email me again or ring me then. Usually I think there's enough of you who've worked with me here before to think that on the whole I'm pretty responsive, I hope. Always happy to have a chat on the phone. I don't think there's anything such thing as a stupid question, but often there's a waffly and all over the place question. And sometimes by taking 10 minutes to consolidate and think about what your question really is, you'll come to the solution yourself. When your question is about where assessments are or what you have to do on the blackboard and stuff like that, again, usually the easiest thing is to ring me or to have a look. It should be pretty straightforward. I'm really sorry about that weird colour in the blackboard, by the way. The shell came across that way. It sort of does my head in, so I'll probably change the red spirally background colour. The other thing that's a bit weird with that blackboard shell, which I can't change, I do have a response in. It's usually if you've got a folder, you can see it's got a little folder and then things are nested in underneath it. For some reason, I can't show you the icons. It just won't let me do that. The previous teacher of this course back in 2011 or something must have set it up in some very weird way. So yeah, that's gone back to Canada. That'll be sorted out next week. So if there's sort of a heading there and doesn't seem to be anything underneath it, just click on the heading and you'll find that there's stuff underneath in the folder. You just can't see it's a folder. Okay. So, expectations. Starting, finishing on time. We start at 10:30 in the morning. We will finish at 5:30 in the morning. 5:30 in the morning, 5:30 in the afternoon. Sorry about that. Other than, and I do need your permission for this, on our very last Saturday, so the Saturday in 4 weeks' time, Justice Macaulay from the Supreme Court has agreed to come and speak to you about a couple of things. In particular, he is the chair of the committee that recently made a really radical decision in Supreme Court terms, or in justice terms anyway. That decision was to put the law reports for Victoria online. So the single source of truth for all law reports going forward will be online. Kind of seems to me like something that should have happened at least 10 years ago, but no. So he's going to talk about change and change in the use of the internet in courts and in the legal system generally. But I think he will also talk to us about what it's like to be a judge when you're making a decision about something that involves technology that you have no understanding about. He's coming from Geelong. We also have Sue Yap from Jade Barnett, who some of you might have seen before, talking about open source law and the way that, because Jade is also involved in that project for online reports. She's also, just before you do a research project, a really good person to speak to because she can talk you through the Jade system and the collaborative research tools that it has. And research refreshers, I find it always a good thing just before you do a research assignment. They have requested a 10 o'clock start. So I need your permission to start half an hour earlier. The other thing about that is with our guest lecturers, as you can tell I'm recording right now, I'll record my stuff. When we're doing group work, I'm going to turn it off. We have a luxury here, and don't get me wrong, I love my OUA students, but the only OUA students who are in this class will be in this room because this isn't offered as an OUA subject. So the recording is just for your benefit if you want to go back to things or if you can't make it to class. However, I need the permission of guest lecturers or guest presenters to record. And I have asked them to be as open as they possibly can and to speak under Chatham House rules. We'll come back to that in a second as well. I very much doubt that Justice McCauley will agree to be recorded, and if he does, he probably won't be as interesting. The girls from Allen's this morning, they'll share their presentation, but they've asked not to be recorded. Roughly 50-50 have said that they do or they don't want to be recorded. So I am recording, but not everything will be recorded. And so you need to know about that. Just quick show of hands. Do we have a problem with 10 o'clock on the last Sunday? Can you? No, actually that's a bit outing you. If you have a problem with 10 o'clock on the last Sunday, can you please let me know? And I will then take a vote. Okay, those of you who've done contract do know that silence is not accepted, so but I'm going to fully engage that nonetheless. Participating. That 20% participation mark should mean that that will happen, but I also want everybody to be respectful of the fact that people participate in their own way. Chatham House rules. What are the Chatham House rules? Anybody? Marcus.
What goes on inside stays inside.
What happens? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Not, that is actually what most people think. That is the general, but it is actually not what Chatham House rules are. Stuart.
No quotes attributed to anyone.
No quotes and no attribution, absolutely. So there is, I have put a link into the blackboard somewhere to the Chatham House rules. So self-attribution is fine. So at that meeting I said that, but essentially you can talk about what happened in the meeting. You can talk in broad terms about what was said in the meeting, but you can't attribute an opinion or a quotation to anybody. If you are not happy to sit with Chatham House rules, then you should exclude yourself from those conversations. Now judges in particular, but senior lawyers are prudent people and unlikely to say anything too controversial, but they are more likely to be open if they respect that you will take what they say under those rules. And so I would appreciate it if you think about that before we go on too much. I do hope these ladies can find us, especially if they're emailing me and they get this email message. Okay, pre-reading. At the moment you'll see that there are only materials for this first intensive and they're being built a little bit on the fly. The reason for that is my guest speakers keep changing the order that they're coming on, and I really want to make sure that you guys are particularly prepared for their contributions. And so I don't want to ask you to read something for a particular intensive if we're not going to cover it in that intensive, because then you won't trust me and you won't read anything. There is, for this course, more likely to be post-reading than lots of pre-reading, except for things where I think it's highly likely that you won't have any real exposure to it, like the blockchain stuff that I asked you to look at and to read before you came, because that's something that for many of you, although I was really excited to see in the discussion board that we have a participant in the Bitcoin market. That's exciting. I've not actually participated myself, so those insights will be invaluable. But for many of you, I mean, again, quick show of hands, blockchain, was that something you'd heard of before? Yes. So I'm thinking there's about, probably 10% of you, maybe a little bit more, that have heard of blockchain, something about it. But it is a fairly new area, and something that's taxing legal minds in a range of different ways. Like I said before, 48-hour turnaround. Phones and computers, I'd rather you took handwritten notes if you can, because I believe in the science that says you're more likely to retain the information and get something out of it. If you are using a computer, which you are more than welcome to do, please use it for what you're doing in the class, unless you're sitting in the very back row. If other people can't see your screen, I'm happy for you to do what the internet is for. Porn, gambling, eBay. I don't care. But if you're distracting other people, I do care. I know myself. In fact, I've been in a class with some of you here where somebody was looking at Facebook, and there's something about Facebook that I can't help myself but come and look at what's on the screen. So as long as I can't see it and other people can't see it, do what you like. Sit in the back row. I will not judge you. Well, not out loud anyway. I will do my best to see that you get the slides in advance. Some of you will find me very frustrating that way because I like to do a bit of a dry run beforehand. I like to think about it. I like to use current events. Particularly on a class that I haven't taught before, I will probably be responding to the mood in the room and what's going on. So me being completely ready to go 3 days before is actually probably not a great thing for you. But I will try. This time, because I've been cut off the system, there will be minor differences between the slides because I am using a slightly earlier draft. But I don't think they'll be terribly different. And I did pick up some typos that I don't remember picking up last time when I was reshaping them. So that should be good. All right. What else? The thing that stands out is probably the room. If we can go through our first lot of guest presentations, I will see what we can do about moving. I'm just quite happy to take over a room if we need to. I'll try next door if there's nobody in there. Enough of you have worked with me before to have a sense of what it's like to be in a classroom with me. I won't cry, and I certainly can't chase you because my legs hurt too much. What else needs to change, or what do we need to be doing in this room for it to work for you? The angle's a bit weird. Yep. Okay. So swivel your chair around a little bit for now, and have your backs to each other. I want you to see each other, be able to see each other, and have a conversation. I see myself very much as being a facilitator here. But yeah, let's work on what the right shape is so that we can have that conversation going. We'll get rid of some extra chairs as well in a moment.
Kathy, a bunch of people have dropped out.
I don't know. We had 54. We started with 64, which frightened the bejesus out of me. We had 54 at last count. It's quite usual for people to drop out over summer before it starts. I haven't done a count here, but yeah, I suspect we'll be able to get rid of the front row, and even with the extras that come in, we should be fine. Breaks, they might be variable. We don't have catering. I'm already parched and needing to drink water. So today I am planning to take a lunch break when we finish with the speakers from Allen's, and we'll move around then. Tomorrow, Julian, we've got actually a really full-on morning. So I've got an employment lawyer coming to speak to you first thing about current issues in employment law with the internet as a particular focus. And then Julian talking about e-discovery. Julian's with us from 12 till 2, which is right over a standard lunch break. I'm going to suggest, if you can, that you bring your lunch tomorrow. It's pretty dead around the city anyway. And that we then do probably a quick leg stretch and get some sunshine if there is any, sort of straight after that with a view to finishing a bit earlier tomorrow, if that works for you. The timetable works on the basis that we have an hour's worth of breaks each day. Again, I'm happy to make those shorter. I can't, in good faith, make them longer because we need to finish by 5:30, whatever happens. I'll also try and stop about once an hour or so and get you to move around or something because it's just not good for you. You go to sleep. I feel like I'm boring. It's all about me. Anything else? So breaks, room. I'm quite warm. Tables, yeah. Yeah, that's about getting into a different room. I was really trying for a room in building 80 because I get HDMI, you guys work at desks, and you can work as groups. Like, you know, we all know the benefits. But I couldn't get there, and I'm feeling a bit stupid that I didn't actually give them some rooms in this building as well.
Can you not get that lecture room over there? I know, like.
Yeah. Well, if there's no one in there, when we get, I'll make a phone call when we finish, and we'll see if we can get in there, or in the one that's in the basement. Both of them should be big enough. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. But sorry.
Maybe they need 60 emails more plus going with like building it.
Yeah, that's not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's also because it's a funny pattern. I quite like the pattern. By the way, those of you who don't like the pattern, I made it up so you can complain to me. I just thought, let's get all the work done before Christmas. Let's do it so that it does mean you're going to have some short space of time to get some of the assignment done, but it means it'll be fresh in your mind, you'll do it. We'll have time in class for you to do some of that stuff, working in groups, you won't have to do all that stuff remotely. You'll get feedback along the way, and then you've basically got from the 20th of December through till the 4th of February to do the stuff you work on alone. So it also means I can go skiing. Something makes me happy. And yeah, that I'm not spending Christmas Eve with you and stuff like that. Unless, of course, you want to. My house is always open. All right, if you think of anything else, I have had a very large number of emails, not all of which I've responded to because I just responded by group announcement saying, what happens if I don't come to class? And the short answer to that is, I'll just reinforce it, it's much harder to get a participation mark if you don't come, particularly the way it's running. If you don't come to the last weekend, you aren't there to do your presentation. Okay, so I will need to find another way to do that. I'm not an asshole. If I can find another way to do it that fits in with the rules, is fair to other people, etc., I'm sure I can find that. But it needs to be fair to your group as well. So you'll spend some time today sorting out who your groups are and what they look like. Minimum 3, maximum 5. If you've got a group that wants, is happy to do it, I'm happy for you to say, make a movie that we can play or something like that. I don't make it work. Marcus is the podcast expert. He can set you up, I'm sure.
He's a Bitcoin expert. He told me to buy it like at 800 a couple of weeks ago, and now it's over 1,000.
So tips as well. If you could help me with the stock exchange, that would be good. All right. Have you noticed I'm not making it flat anymore? It's not bad. So this is where we ended up before. I apparently told you a fib. I got 2 bits of information. I thought that the slides that the Allen's girls presented would be available to you, but not the recording. Apparently they can't share their slides that have got Allen's branding on them either, but they have given me a copy, and so I will make a version of them that's not Allen's branded with the data in it for you. I might not do that today. Actually, that's probably one of the things that should have been on the admin expectations is what happens with recordings. Usually what I do with recordings is I do a sync with the slides as well as the audio, and then I make that available through the Blackboard, usually 48 hours, sometimes given how many there are over a weekend, and they do take a little bit of time. I try and make sure the sound's cleaned up a bit. I don't really do much more than that. So I don't think it would be really nice of you if you complained before Thursday. You should expect them Tuesday, Wednesday, but I think by Thursday you could complain. and you could say, where are they? The other trick for young players with those is I actually upload them to YouTube and just put them up. Sometimes I have the time to cut them into bite-sized pieces for you because nobody really likes a recording that goes on for hours. Often I don't. The way that I do them though, usually you can just hit the button that says go to YouTube, and you can just hit the other button that says view more underneath, and you will see the title of each slide and a little kind of hyperlink thing that means that you can go straight to that bit. Like, you can do that yourselves. I don't really need to cut it up for you. If anybody needs a YouTube lesson and you're prepared to get it from a 51-year-old middle-aged lady, I'm happy to give it to you, but that's putting the passive into passive-aggressive, if ever I did. I also think it's good to have a break, so wave me down if I don't think you have a break in some way. Alright, pretty much everybody who's ever been with me before will have seen this before. I use the work of Dewey, famous for the decimal library system, who did a lot of work back in the 1930s, so this is not new, about how people retain information. I'm using retaining information as a proxy for learning. I think we all know that there is something, particularly at a postgraduate level, there's something quite different between remembering stuff and being able to analyse and synthesise stuff. But I think for this purpose it makes sense. Essentially what the research shows is the more actively you are involved in what you do in any kind of learning situation, the more likely you are to retain it. And again, I'm suggesting actually learn something. So, if you go to a lecture, the research would suggest that you'll retain about 5% of the information 48 hours later. If you give the lecture, chances are you will retain 90% of it 48 hours later. So I'm the one who's probably most likely to learn something as we go ahead on that basis. So the more actively you are involved, and actually usually I have a lot of colour and movement on my slides because the more you actively kind of engage with the pictures and stuff like that, the more you learn, the more you retain it. This time I've just noticed the slides that I've done for this topic are very text heavy, which actually is great for getting feedback scores because you guys are doing revision when you get the course experience surveys, and so then you're looking at the slides, you want them as revision notes, and you give us better scores for that. So well, for me, because there are no CES over the summer apparently. So the more you do, the more likely you are to retain stuff. Hence, wanting to find a way to incorporate participation in as part of the marking criteria and recognising that everybody participates. So, on that note, I just want to escape out of here and show you the tool that some of you were using that I was getting my questions from. If you go via the Blackboard, there's a link that will go straight into today. The trick with that, and I'll just show you what that looks like, and the next step looks like in a second, you will have gone one step further. If you don't, you can go to app.gosoapbox.com and you will find a screen that looks like this, and that code is the code that you need. So, what happens next? That stage, I am joining in. It's going to ask me, I believe, oh no, see, it's logged in as me, which is a bit annoying. It's just recognising me. The step in between for you should have been, it's asking for your name. People seem to be able to follow that instruction. I saw lots of student numbers. So anybody who missed out earlier, who came a bit late, I'm asking you to put your student number in there because I take data out of this that I am going to use for working out whether you were participating or not. I will not remember your student number, and I will be able to, in my Excel spreadsheet with the magic that Bill Gates has given me, just be able to map in my marking criteria who those comments belonged to, and create a grade. And I don't have to look at the name, and so my unconscious bias is out the window. hopefully I don't have too much unconscious bias, but that's the nature of unconscious bias. We're not actually aware of it. So I will log out of this because I want to log in not as me, because this is kind of a control page. Sorry. Let me... I'm just repeating what I've done before, which is a little bit annoying. I need to... Okay, so 10 of you are online, I can see that. I just don't remember how to log myself out. Oh no, that should be alright. Actually, it should be right. Okay. First little feature it has, I'm actually quite busy up here and I don't have any tech to help me. So I won't necessarily see this, but if you've got no idea what I'm saying and what's going on, the top area, so this is my dashboard actually, so the top area you can see, can you see this confusion meter? You're confused or you're not confused? Wait, can somebody just be confused for
I
me?
just did it.
Okay, you can see. Okay, it's going to do shouty red at me. It's going to say these people are confused. That should be all mean to me that I stop and restate. The issue is, particularly today, because I no longer work for this esteemed university, I'm having to use my mobile phone to get on the internet, so I won't, in theory I could have it in my hand and it would beep red at me and I would know. It's not going to work that way this weekend, but you can do that. Then you can stop being confused. When you stop being confused, that's all good. It's sort of your way of yelling at me. Thought you guys would be happy. I did put some questions up so you could sort of play with it. I'll get there in a second. What most people ended up using just intuitively during the last slot were these, what we call the social Q&A. The good thing about the social Q&A is as you think of a question, you can just throw it in. Okay, and then when you go to put another question in, apparently it's AI, lots of acronyms by the way in that last presentation, AI, artificial intelligence, or sometimes also called NL, machine learning. So it has an AI algorithm that basically says, oh hang on a minute, this question looks substantially similar to another question. So if you put in a question that looks a bit like somebody else's question, in theory at least, whether it works, I don't know, it's going to say to you, hey, that looks a bit like this other question, do you want to vote up somebody else's question instead? So you can do that, and so we voted the questions up. Then I can pull these out as a spreadsheet later and I'll send them to the girls to give us some written answers and to share them. So that's the Q&A function that'll be sitting there running all the time. You can feel free to put questions or comments. They are phrased as questions, but sometimes we don't have a question to ask, sometimes we just want to make a comment, and I think that's fine too. So you can use that. We'll clear those out each day. So we've got two, I have to set them up as quizzes. The second one of these is, let's see if anything's happening in it yet, is a question that I will get you to put together later. There's two questions in this quiz. You'll see them when you go into it, and you'll get some time to do it in a little while, where I'm just going to ask you, once you form some groups, to tell me who's in your group and broadly what you think you want to talk about. And don't worry, you'll get some time to do that in a moment. I might from time to time put little quiz questions in. Those of you who have been in classes with me before have seen me do sort of multiple choice questions, either quite a lot or not at all, depending on how it works and what you guys like. What I was thinking would happen for the discussions, and I've got some here, is that while the girls were talking, and some people saw this, they've added questions in there. Just makes me easy to do it by topic. I don't really care. We should probably talk about it beforehand with the guest lecturers. The benefit of doing it that way is they're all contained in one place and I can see them. So for the lecturers tomorrow, I will ask you to do that. Questions, concerns? problems.
So what's reflected up there on the screen, like?
Sorry, I'm in the
Your-
dashboard as opposed to as one of you at the
Yes.
moment, so I don't know why I couldn't log out. So that's what I can see, but it's not looking terribly different, is it, for you?
We've got less discussion topics, I believe.
Yeah, so you'll see that I've only, the ones that I don't want you to do yet are locked. So,
Oh, I see.
so these are our 2 speakers tomorrow. I'll lock these ones at the end of the day. In fact, I'll lock them before class tomorrow. So for those of you who were actively listening and engaged with what's going on but didn't sort of get a chance to and hadn't thought about this yet to make a comment or to add a question based on one of the presentations today, you might like to throw your question or comment in there before we start tomorrow morning. I will lock them up and then I will open each of those as we have the speakers tomorrow. And again, I'll close them at the end of the day.
Are you going to be marking off that?
I am using that as one of the inputs for participation. Yes, and I'll talk to you, show you the rubric for participation.
But will you remember if we have spoken in class about
I am furiously taking notes to add to that, but yes, I will. I will do my best, is what I'm saying.
So Kath,
Jamal.
the discussions is with the presentations with our guest speakers and the social Q&A more for.
Yeah, just generally as you're going. Think of something, an observation. Look, the reality is if all of you were sitting here thinking, how can I best get the best mark I can in the participation, I wouldn't get a word in, neither would our speakers, and there'd be some big personalities taking over the room. One of the criteria will be the quantity. Absolutely. You don't participate. If I have no evidence that you've participated, if there's nothing in there, I can't give you a mark. But it's only one criteria and it's not even a significant criteria. What I'm interested in is the quality. Something, and all I'm using this for, the same as my notes of what you say in the classroom, is evidence that you are participating, that you're thinking about what we're doing and you're taking it to the next level. I'm absolutely happy to get feedback from any and all of you on how it could be done better, what does and doesn't work about this. It is, for me, I find it's a huge responsibility to include participation because I want to make sure, especially with so many of you, I'm looking around the room, I mean, most of you I recognise from somewhere before, but I can tell you right now, I could not list all of your names. So I'm looking at the front row and I can do 1'4" in the front row, which is like pretty crappy. But yeah, so, and that's another reason for wanting you to do this with your student, because I'll just do the assessment completely independently of who you are and I'll map it across.
So,
I'm sure there'll be better ways.
So this morning when we put ours in social Q&A, was that the wrong section to put it in?
It makes it a little bit harder for me, but it's not the wrong session because you were participating and that is good. I will work it out. It just makes it a little bit harder for me to just...
So your
make it
preference is to
personally.
put it in the discussion?
Yeah, if we can do it in the discussion for the guest speakers. And the reason for that is I can just download a spreadsheet with your number, what your contributions were. I will then do some voodoo magic to sort of weight, what I think of the value or the quality of the contributions that you make. It does have a profanity filter on it. It'll be really interesting to see how far you can push that. I might try it myself. Yeah, so I think that I still see it if you make rude comments. And I would suggest that online participation is the same as, in many ways, face-to-face participation. Just because you can't see somebody's name, and the reality is we can all work out who it is, doesn't mean that you can be rude. There is always a way to say yes and, as opposed to no but, or yes but. There is always a way to expand the conversation and move it forward. And that to me is the downfall of an electronic discussion board, particularly when you're marked on it. You don't have discussions, you just all shout your points of view. and I'd like to be able to get conversation going, especially face to face, but also in this kind of environment. Anything else?
Do you have to pay for this website?
I think you pay about $3,000 a subject, don't you?
4.5.
4.5. No, you don't have to pay anything to use it. No, it's under the university license. So,
But like, does the university?
in fact, they haven't sorted mine out, and we could have some control. The university pays for it. You can actually use it for free for up to 40 users or something for events yourselves if you find it useful. Could be a bit of fun in some other, I don't know, if you want to crowdsource Trivial Pursuit answers or something. So, let me go back to here. What am I trying to do? That's right, go back here. All right. I'm going to start with what you guys always want me to start with. Let's talk about the assessment. But we've already started talking about the participation element. But basically you've got 3 physical deliverables. The first, which is essentially due at the end of next weekend from memory, is each group will create a scope that tells me what they're going to focus their presentation on. So let me just talk really broadly about the way that this assessment works in theory. The idea is for it to be scaffolded. So you will form groups and you will find an issue and a client that you wish to represent or advise. The language in the course guide does focus on commercial. I am happy to read that quite broadly. If any of you have a social justice issue or something like that, can we just talk about it? As long as I can pin something commercial on it, I'm happy there. The idea is that you are finding as a group some particular area that you are interested in, and you are going to create a presentation to, as your group, to advise that entity about some internet law issues. Internet law, like I said before, law of shopping. So might relate to privacy and data in some way, might relate to a new business offering, could relate to anything. I put a whole heap of trigger type questions on the Blackboard area just to sort of get you started thinking about them. And you'll have a look at those in a minute. Already within sort of minutes of it, the Blackboard site going live, somebody suggested, and so I know I've got 2 that I noticed from the discussion board. By the way, the discussion board in the Blackboard website, there will be one for each weekend. I will take participation in that into account as well, okay? So there are 2 to us. One, somebody, was it you, Jackie, I think, raised the question of whistleblowers, so WikiLeaks, Anonymous, those kind of, there's a whole heap of scenarios that you might be interested in following up and looking at what the legal implications are. By the way, your client could be government, if you want. You might come to it from a policy point of view, which particularly, you know, given what Priyanka was saying just before, I think that's actually, you know, one of the questions that we have as lawmakers, or lawyers I should say, is which comes first? We know law that's made by courts follows disputes or follows some sort of event. But law that's made by statute follows policy, sometimes arising as a consequence of a dispute or an enterprise. Somebody else raised the issues about the use of the dark web, so Tor and Onion sites. I don't know who that person was, I can't remember their name. There you are, and your name is?
Julia.
Julia. So, okay. I'm just trying to identify those people because if anybody else is interested in that kind of area, that might be a group that you want to form. Some of the stuff that I think the use of blockchain, what happened with Ethereum is really interesting. I'm actually quite happy and quite excited by the idea of looking at some real world examples of stuff that's gone wrong recently or gone right, and looking at what the law should be or how companies should deal with those situations. So things like the census debacle fairly recently. So how would you advise a technology provider to the department or the department itself in relation to the use of its technology and its approach to the separation, those three buckets of data that it said it was going to deal with, without the quasi-denial of service issues and the other issues that arose with access to the census? Ashley Madison, Penthouse, Adult Friend Finder, massive data leaks. There's another one called Fling.com. It seems that if you're going to be involved in illicit affairs and pornography on the web, that you collect a hell of a lot of data about people, and the careers of young Mormons have been ruined over it. I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of 14-year-old boy in me somewhere, but yeah, there's like the responsibilities of these kind of organisations with data and how to inform citizens about how to protect themselves if they wish to in that environment. Facebook's fairly recent forays, or at least its disclosures more recently, to its use of data essentially to conduct experiments on people. What, if any, policy should arise in relation to that? So what I'm also trying to do today is find out what you're interested in, because, like I said, this is a really big subject. We could do a whole lot of things. The course guide, you will see, maps out week by week the order in which I was planning to deal with a whole lot of these things. In reality, I'm trying to get as many interesting industry speakers as I can, because I think that's more meaningful, and I can guide you to the stuff that you need to read in relation to the other stuff. So really up to you how that's going to work. Any other ideas for the kinds of things? Anybody want to pitch right now what they would like to look at? Sorry, can you remind me of your name?
Cat.
Cat.
Yes.
Cat.
Cat.
I should know. Cat or Kath?
Cat.
Cat.
No H at the end.
Okay. Cat.
What about employment and technology? I know it's particularly prevalent at the moment with universities and enterprise bargaining is academic freedom online.
Excellent topic. Excellent topic indeed. So tomorrow, the first speaker that we have, again at 11, is a practicing employment lawyer from a firm called Logie Smith Lanyon. Her name is Zoe Brick. I still don't have her slides or what she wants you to read in advance, so I just put some basic stuff there for you to think about. So I can certainly, that's the other thing. You tell me what you want to know about, I can make sure that our industry experts are prepared to answer some questions about it and head you off in the right direction, because even if they're not working in that area directly, they can tell you how they would start to think about that question. So a lot of stuff happening in the employment space. So what, as an employee, regardless of the academic freedom issue, and I think that's a specific one that's of particular interest, but where does your online presence as an individual stop and your obligations as an employee start? So there was a fairly well publicised event last year where an employee of, his surname was Nolan, and Michael Nolan his name was, I can remember his name because it's the same surname as mine. I want to say Monash University, but I think I'm confusing two issues in my mind. Anyway, Michael Nolan made some very disparaging remarks about, what's her name, Van Dam, the social commentator. Van Badham, that's right. Van Dam, where did that come from? Van Badham. And ultimately lost his job. The one from Monash University, whose name I can't remember. Sorry? Sure, if you're going to say a music fix, you know I like a joke.
I think he actually was talking about Clementine Ford.
Clementine Ford, was it? Yes, it was. Sorry, Clementine Ford. And then there was, a couple of years before, there was the woman, former model, who was one of the judges on Next Top Model, who unfortunately committed suicide following some social media trolling. And that particular troll was a Monash University employee who also lost their job.
Then there was Ros Ward from the Safe Schools Coalition.
Yeah, that's right, Ros Ward. So these kind of things are happening. These are real life problems. What do you do as an employer when your staff members in their private capacity have opinions that, let's make it black and white here, that you don't agree with, that may be causing some social harm? But then go across the spectrum, what happens as an employer when you have an employee who has social opinions you don't agree with, but that they're not detrimental or they're not causing harm? Where does that impact on their right to say what they think, if they have a right as such?
That often happens when it's in complete opposition of the government's view.
Yeah,
For example,
exactly.
refugees.
So, now it's interesting, so you're still working at the same place, Jamal? So Jamal works for, sorry, stop me if I'm saying the wrong thing. So he works for a not-for-profit that does work in an area that I suspect has a lot of social, moral opposition. I'm thinking that his staff members might from time to time be harassed on social media or otherwise, and sometimes on the footpath outside the places in which they work. So, third-party organisation identifies individuals who have very strong positions that are impacting their ability to ply their trade, for want of a better expression. What rights do they have? Do they have any? Should they have any? Again, I would think that kind of set of issues, you've got the opportunity to advise employers, you've got the opportunity to, and I'm happy with the idea of creating some sort of social information too. So if you don't want to have a client that is the government or an employer, it might be that what you want to do is provide information to the general population about what their rights are, and think about the way to do that. I know this is going to actually frustrate the hell out of some of you who really would just prefer that I gave you a question. I recognise that. And we move on because it's not going to change. Any other ideas?
What we'd like to do is Harry. Michael, in his capacity of employment with workers' compensation and profiling potential claimants and history and implications of those, the validity of their claims subject to what's transpired.
So much stuff happening in that space. My Fitbit would just absolutely crucify me in any investigation about my ability to sit on the couch and mope around. All that data, we were just talking before, so, about, because the use of wearables in those kind of spaces is happening a lot in the States. There was a attorney who was disbarred last year or maybe the year before because they failed to advise their client that wearable tech might in fact be brought in evidence. And in fact it was a workers' comp case. I think it was, actually it might have been Canada, where a employer said, we don't believe you're sick, we think that you are in fact well, and the evidence that they used was shared Fitbit tracking data that demonstrated that they were doing their 15,000 steps a day or something or other. But ultimately the lawyer was disbarred because there's a duty of competence in those jurisdictions, and competence extends to, in those jurisdictions, jury might be out here, to essentially having a basic understanding of how the world works and advising your clients in relation to evidence that they may well be sharing.
How did they get that data?
Any of you have a Fitbit device?
But did they have to subpoena
I don't know how they did in that case. They may well have. I don't know in that case. But any of you who have those devices, it syncs with the cloud. I have one.
You can also share it with your friends.
You share it with your friends, exactly. So
It's
you do challenges. I'm doing a challenge right now. I might just walk up and down a little bit. The fact that I can walk, I said I'd stop boasting about my long walk, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen soon. Okay, so absolutely, sorry, I went off. I don't know whether that was what you were interested in. But the use of technology and the internet as evidence in those kind of cases is really interesting. The use of technology, cloud data as evidence, just generally, and the issues with the collection and collation of that information, again, something that you'll be able to talk to Julian about tomorrow when he's here. Certainly in the employment area, there's a lot of stuff there with that, where that line is. I overheard you talking about surveillance data earlier too, which is again is about an evidence collection issue. I think there are lots of evidence collections issues outside of just the employment sphere. What else? Coco?
I'm not sure whether this would be appropriate because it's more criminal than commercial.
You can find a way.
I'm interested in like revenge porn and young kids teenagers having Snapchats.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
So particularly if how we can get that into commercial area is the extent to which an employer, for example, has a responsibility. So one of the cases that I have for you to read at some point, might have even been in tomorrow's lot, is, and I'm not going to remember the name of it now, but essentially the facts involve two people who were fly-in, fly-out workers in mines in WA who had a relationship. It went sour. He decided to publish photographs that she had sent to him in private moments for private use, shall we say. And so and the reason for that, and so that's a straight revenge porn case, but both of them were employees of the same organisation. He shared that material with her co-workers. How does that impact the mining company who employs them and their obligation to maintain a safe workplace? So there is definitely that connection. I would also be happy to look at, and actually be really interested if any of you want to advise a school in relation to what their obligations are in relation to issues that can arise in relation to the use of the internet or otherwise. Also happy for you to just create your own not-for-profit decision to just inform the world at large in relation to consumers generally about what their obligations are or what their rights are or what they should be. You can also advise government at a policy level. I think some of the stuff, and what did you think about that presentation this morning from the Allens ladies? Was that helpful? I think one of the interesting things for me that came out of that conversation is something that I often try to talk to people about is it's really easy when you're at law school and you're asked, you're given a problem and you opine beautifully often and how the law should change and what the law should be. But in reality, changing the law is actually not that easy when you think about it. I mean, what do you need to change the law? Money. Or Bitcoin.
Compelling policy position.
You need a compelling policy position. Why does it need to be compelling?
It's got to get through Parliament.
It's got to get through Parliament. These days that really means you need bipartisan support. You need bipartisan support.
You need a decision in a court. That'll change the
Decision in a court will change the law. Not really easy to do, and judges are pretty much stuck with the facts that they have before them. And to really get a change, you need to get to the High Court. You really need a majority, and you need some pretty out there new thinking. So when's the last time you can think of and you guys are more on top of this, you can think of the High Court changing the law.
Marbo.
Marbo, it's the vibe. Definitely a good example. Our understanding of the way the law worked was different before Marbo than afterwards. When was Marbo? 90s. 90s sometime, I can't remember. It was after I graduated. But Tasmanian dams, a bit before that.
I'd say the latest one that directly impacted my life as a Territorian was the Northern Territory of Fisheries against the what essentially was the Native Title Act regarding whether tidal water, being the water...
Marbo of the sea, as we like to
Marbo
call
of the sea,
it.
well, between the high mark and the low mark, whether that was technically native tidal or whether it was water of the sea.
Exactly. How many times have we seen cases even head to the High Court where we thought the law might change but it didn't? Immigration cases recently, same-sex marriage cases. You know, if we're hanging our hat on getting a High Court judge to change the law for us, we better be prepared to go in for the long haul. Okay, so changing the law, you know, it smells of cop-out a little bit. Identifying spaces where there is no current law and looking at what the policy should be is interesting. And understanding as much as we can about how the current law might apply in these new situations. And I found it interesting what Priyanka was saying about Ethereum, for example. Now I'm actually about to breach Chatham House rules. So I will take that conversation offline later, so I won't say that other than to comment on that there are many different approaches to determining what a legal personality is. We know a company is a legal personality. We know a human is a legal personality. We know a human under 18 is not a legal personality from the point of view of capacity to contract, but can probably go to prison in an adult context and will be held to account for necessities, etc. So there's this grey area. But how is a company different from an algorithm?
Doesn't it also come back to control? So if you think about a company from a control perspective, people liable on actual control of the entity, so who's in control of the algorithm?
So did you hear that? That's yeah. Well, who is? Maybe control is the wrong mindset in this circumstance. Maybe it's not the maker of the algorithm, but the user of the algorithm who's in control. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to go through the rest of the assessment tasks and then we're going to break and I'm going to really encourage you to try and find a group of people who might be interested in something that you're interested in. Those people who I've identified, are you still keen on doing the kinds of topic that you were talking about? So if you're interested in those topics, you can find those people in that moment. If you're, I'm not sure how you're going to do it, to be quite frank. If you want to just come and throw ideas on the whiteboard, what I was sort of planning to do here is if we just identify what these are, you can write your names in there and we can split them up if there are too many people interested. We've got the topics there on the blackboard area for you to start with. I would suggest that you pick your group based on a topic that interests you more than people who you think you'll like working with, although the second is pretty damn important, because you are going to spend from the 18th of December through till the 4th of February working on a report by yourself on an element that comes out of this topic. So you better be interested in it because that's a lot of time. And, you know, having said that, you all know I'm a pushover, and if you come up with an interesting topic, we can probably work around it. Okay, so the next part, what will happen by next weekend, you're going to give me a scope document. So you're going to, as a group, so I want one from each group, one person from each group to upload it, and you are going to tell me who you're acting for, what you think the key issues are, what kind of research you think you need to do, broad sense. You don't need to do the research in advance. It doesn't need to be an annotated bibliography or anything like that. You're going to give me enough so that a week later when we get back together, I can tell everybody what we're looking at, and I can give each group feedback on whether I think it's got enough meat in it for you guys to do well. Recognising that some of you will want to do brilliantly, and some of you, P's get degrees. I get that. So I'm going to give, so that's really just so I can give you the feedback. The Sunday of the last week, each group is going to give a presentation. They're going to present to the whole of us. Part of your participation, Mark, will include you guys watching and participating in those presentations and asking interesting, meaty questions. Part of your marks for giving the presentation will include how well you respond to those questions. So I will be giving you feedback as we go. Then out of that group presentation, each of you will come away with one bit that's your area of interest. So you might be thinking about that right now. If you're in a group, say of 4, you might have 4 bits to your presentation, 4 clear areas, and each of you might take responsibility for one. Obviously, it needs to be cohesive and brought together. You're going to work as a group, but you might start there. Gives me opportunity to give you feedback, gives you opportunity to give you feedback, from which you base your final report. Okay? You look very serious. This is going to be fun. You are going to have so much fun. Questions, concerns, frustrations? All right, I think I've actually already spoken to this largely. Your scope, maximum 2,000 words. That's a maximum. All right, if you can do it succinctly, clearly, in a page, I'm happy with that. Okay, what I want, what the purpose of this is to show me that you've come up with an issue that's meaty enough to help me work out if I can get other people in to talk to you or to send you off to talk to other people. I am quite happy to use my networks in this space to send you as a group or as individuals to go and talk to practitioners or people who work in different areas, if I feel like you're not going to be wasting their time. So this is as much as anything about me being able to give you feedback. Okay? Okay, what it's going to do, you're going to describe the business or case study that's going to be the subject of your presentation. So just say, for example, one of you decided, or a group of you decided, Hillary Clinton's email server issues is the issue that you're most interested in. I might suggest to you that we just, change the names and turn this politician into an Australian politician so we can deal with the Australian law. From the very beginning, you would sit there and you would look at, well, what kind of areas might be relevant here? Who am I advising? Am I advising ASIO, or am I advising the politician? Or maybe actually we want to do it as a case study, so we'll split it in half, and half of us will do one and half will do the other. You might want to do that, I'm thinking on my feed here, you might like to do that presentation as a mock trial. You might like to put the case for one or the other as to why this was a good thing or a bad thing, what kind of evidence, and so one of you might be looking at what kind of evidence you might need to collect and what the issues would be under the evidence laws in relation to that. Acting for one or the other, what the discovery issues might be. You might be looking at what the policy issues should be around parliamentary disclosure. I don't know, this is your assignment, not mine. You guys will work out broad line what those issues are, how you're thinking about presenting it, what kind of research you would be looking at. If you're going to give me that, then I'll have to think about it and come back to you. And I will try and be constructive and give you especially the hardest ones for me with that is always the good ones, because with everybody I will always try and find something where it's like, when you've got that, what extra can I think of that you can add in? And so I will always try and do that. Questions, concerns, thoughts? James?
Submission through Turnitin or email?
Submission through Turnitin. Haven't set it up yet. 1 submission per group. The first page should say who your group members are. I will set up in Blackboard a group area for each group once I know who you are. Okay, so we will just create a group. So in that group area you can exchange files, all the rest of it. I know you'll ignore it. You won't use it. You'll use, I don't know, WhatsApp or something like that to talk to each other, and that's fine, but at least I've done it for you. Group presentation. So, I know people hate presentations and they hate working in groups, but actually, in the real world, you have to work in groups all the time. And the better you are, look, there's a no, I can see this. No, you don't. No, you don't. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, criteria for this include demonstrating you're working effectively in a group, demonstrating your legal research skills, appropriately and clearly communicating reasons for your answers. In this case, sort of your problem and your answers, really. And being able to give effective and persuasive presentations using the English language and legal terminology with accuracy. So what does that actually mean? Essentially, half of your mark will be based on your individual presentation performance, the bit of the presentation that belongs to you. On that day, before you present, you will give me an electronic copy of your presentation. If you are not using PowerPoint, you will talk to me at least 24 hours beforehand so I can work out how I get a copy of it. Because when I'm sitting here listening to you, I am going to need to be scribbling notes over the whole thing, and I will probably record them so I can go back, because it's actually quite hard to observe a presentation, participate in it, and take notes properly about who's doing what. So, half of it I will be looking at how you work as a group. Are these 3, 4, 5 separate presentations that are just linked by the use of the same font? Or is there one cohesive message that makes sense with this group? Is there evidence that this group is supporting each other and working together well? Part of the way I will get that is I will ask each group to report back to me on their experience of working in a group. Only one of the factors I take into account. You are not marking each other. I will ask each of you to give me your own self-assessment of how you went. The second half of it, or the first half of it, sorry, I've said it the other way around for the bullet points, because I think of that, how you work as a group, as being the first thing. Second thing is your individual performance. Okay, did you make sense? When you were asked questions, were you able to answer the questions? Was it clear that you understood what it is that you were doing? Did you advance the conversation in the room about that subject matter in some way? So the criteria here, demonstrating group effectiveness, I will look at the cohesion, the consistency, and the extent to which you listen to feedback along the way. By the way, when I say listen to feedback, I don't mean take my feedback on board. My feedback will be my feedback. I get it that you won't always agree with what I have to say, and willy-nilly just because I said so is probably not the best way to approach it. I will raise questions with you when you give the scope, or I will try to, about things that you could think about or rabbit warrens you might want to go down. You guys are the ones doing the deep research here. If it turns out you don't think that that's useful and you've got a reason for it, it's a one line, we looked at, I don't know, the Child Protection Act, but given that none of the judges were children, we thought it was irrelevant, and it seems that Kath cut and pasted the wrong commentary into our feedback. That's perfectly fine. Demonstrating your research skills. So, 2 sides to that. Identifying what the law is, so how does the law operate, but also how would it apply in this situation? Or if there is no law, what you think it might be, or what kind of category it might fall into. We look at your reasoning, so the extent to which you've identified issues, your analysis, the use of your supporting materials, and whether you're logical, whether it makes sense. One of the things that I see with way too many assessment pieces, I must say, is all this great work and then a conclusion that doesn't seem to bear any resemblance to the work that went before it. So that I see as a logic leap. And then your effectiveness and your ability to present. Okay, so whether you're fluent, effective, professional, questions handled well. Now there are some of you that this idea of presenting in front of a group will absolutely terrify. And I'm happy to have conversations with people about alternative ways to get through there. I am happy to talk about, for example, using a video presentation if that's what you would prefer to do. But you need to work it with your group and you need to work out how your group is going to work. Now, if there is a group, for example, that believes that the best allocation of work is to work to people's strengths, where some people are doing the scripting and the research and somebody else is doing the actual presenting, I want to hear about that in advance, because I want some reasonable basis, some evidence base on which I can assess the participation and the input of people that I don't hear speak. Okay, so I'm not going to dictate that everybody has to speak, but I do need a reasonable evidence base on which to give you a mark. Questions, concerns, frustrations? You will think of things later. You will share those thoughts with me. You can do that on the Go Soapbox and I'll get back to everybody, or on the discussion board, or you can just email me and chances are I'll share with everybody. Okay, moving on. Individual report. Again, 4,500 words is a maximum. Doesn't have to include your bibliography or footnotes, unless you're one of those people who puts half the story in the footnotes. Risk theories, I might not read them. Due the 5th of February 2016, there's a typo for you, 2017, next year, feels like a really long way away, doesn't it? Yeah, it'll come up really, really quick. The last 2 weeks of January, I will at best be contactable by email, and that depends on getting back on the email system here between now and then anyway. I'm happy to do some pop-up tutes as you prepare your assignment, and on the last day I will run through some tips and tricks on writing a report or research report. What kind of paper you end up writing, I'm just using report here generally, will really depend on your topic and your audience. So we might want to talk about that one by one as you refine what your topics are. I am very open to, happy to, if you send me, even outside the scope, sort of an overview of what it is that you want to focus on. I'm more than happy to give you feedback on that as well. But hopefully the way this is structured, you will get feedback as you're going and you'll be able to get that deeper insight. Questions, thoughts, concerns there? So, what you're doing here and what you're being assessed on is demonstrating that you can use disciplined knowledge, drawing from the topics that we've covered in your own research. The weight here will be on your own research because you want to do a deep, narrow dive, and the way the class has been structured, the breadth we will get through you having to listen to everybody else's reports, the number of industry speakers that we have, and then requiring you to do participation, which means you do have to pay attention to the stuff that might not be on your individual test. Demonstrate an understanding of a wide range of legal concepts, values, principles and rules of Australian law, and explain the relationships between them. Many of you, well, probably actually less than I expected. My straw poll earlier in the class suggested about a third of you are really only at the beginning of your degree, which means you might have done contract, you might have done tort, one or the other, maybe both, intro and maybe some jurisprudence. Others will be right towards the end. I've had at least 2 emails from people saying this is their last subject. Which is really exciting. Is this your last subject? No? No, I saw a nod. Whose last subject is it? Okay.
Last
You.
semester.
Last semester. Okay, so somebody else, you'll finish in somebody else's class. So what I'm suggesting there, I got distracted by my own thought. What I'm suggesting there is maybe when you are looking at focusing your report, you might like to focus on an area that touches on the law in some area that you've already studied, or if not, in an area where you feel comfortable pushing yourself to the next stage. So, for example, I don't believe there is a privacy subject at this university. Am I right?
Yeah.
I am right. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, privacy and anything. I think it's pretty hard to do anything in this area without touching on the privacy law and thinking about the changes in relation to privacy law. Again, I'm just really suggesting so you think strategically. If you haven't done tort and you decide to look at defamation issues and the internet, you are probably not as good a position to do that as the person sitting next to you has done tort. And similarly, if you decide to look at the use of online contracts, and I mean a topic that I think is particularly interesting is the extent to which smart contracts, so contracts that are entirely algorithmic and use blockchain technology to execute themselves, so self-executing contracts. I think if you haven't actually done contract law yet, that might not be the smartest subject for inquiry for you if you can't contextualise it in contract law. So if you want to talk to me about those things as we go, let's do that. All right. So for 1 and 3, so the scoping report, and for your final assignment, the marking rubric that you get will be one that's, I suspect, very familiar to you. Works to those 3 criteria. 10% technical, so your writing, your use of AGLC, using terminology I should say, correctly, those kind of things. 10% of your mark. Research, 40%. The extent to which your research is thorough, and the quality of the synthesis of legal materials and information relevant to the topic. This is a great subject for you to be able to demonstrate that you can synthesize, that you can identify existing law and how it might apply in a new scenario. And then your discussion is 50%, the extent to which you're clear in the way that you articulate issues, applicable law, etc., etc. Now, I know it only says 10% for your use of the English language, your ability to punctuate, put verbs in sentences, know the difference between plural and singular, picking tenses, that kind of thing. The reality is it is very hard for you to clearly articulate issues, applicable law, and structure a discussion well if your attention to detail and the use of English language is not good. So if you need help with essay writing, English language use, etc., there are resources for that. They are harder to access over summer, I believe, but they are there and you should access them if you need to. writing is the tool of a lawyer's trade, to me it remains bizarre that it's only 10% on our standard marking criteria for use of the English language, because you need to use it every day. Again, thoughts, concerns, questions, frustrations? We're almost there, you can stretch your legs in a minute. Okay, so participation, I think I've actually already spoken through. There is a rubric available to you already, but I have tried to be as fair in the way I'm approaching it as possible. I have a slide in the discussion board. So yes, frequency is important. Sorry, could you just make sure that computer isn't wet?
It's wettish.
Wettish. Oh, I hate it when computers die on my watch. So frequency, I mean, the thing is, if you don't contribute, I've got nothing to hang my hat on. So contribute as much as you can, but I am more interested in the quality of your contributions. Listening skills, active listening is a part of being able to participate. The only way I can gauge that will be through comments that you make during or after class about what we've done. The extent to which, if I ask you a question, you're able to answer it or know what I'm talking about. But also in participation, I am also taking into account the extent to which you've made contributions that lead to effective group outcomes. Speaking of participation, please, I've asked you to do this before. You two asked about employment type related issues. Tomorrow we have a guest speaker who's an employment lawyer. Would one of you like to volunteer to say a word of thanks to her when she's finished?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Then also we've got somebody who's particularly interested in e-discovery and e-courts who might like to thank Julian when he's here tomorrow. There, everybody's looking. It's Elise, isn't it?
Oh, I just was discussing at lunchtime about how one of the lawyers at my office said that if he had to do discovery in paper form, he would need 6 officers at his, to work from, and now he can have it all on the iPad or whatever.
All on the iPad, yeah. So, cool. Again, we've got a lot of guest speakers. If any of you are particularly keen to be the person who does a word of thanks for them, just let me know. My own experience is, having gone in and spoken to lots of people about lots of things, it actually just feels nicer when the people that you're giving up your weekend time to talk to, if one of them says thank you. When I do it, like, I've already called a favour, so I just appreciate it if you guys can do the thanking. Cool? Alright, so unless there are any questions, thoughts, do you want to just take 15 minutes now, come back at 3 o'clock, just stretch your legs, and we'll start talking about how the internet is regulated, because once we get into DNS servers, you'll be riveted and you won't want to get fresh air.